Hi guys, in this video I will talk to you about my approach of answering APM questions. I have to say I use the same approach regardless of what question I'm facing in APM, and I can assure you that if you get used to doing that same thing that I will tell you and show you in our course again and again and again during your preparation, you would find it pretty easy, or let's say at least much easier in the real exam, to build an answer to the questions that you will face on that day. So when it comes down to answering any APM question, please guys have those 5 things embedded into your brains, okay? You need to think about the structure of your answer, then you brainstorm ideas you can include, then you plan which ones to use, and only after those 3 things you write the actual answer. Last but not least, having kept an eye on the time throughout, you move on as soon as your time is up. So the first very important thing we want to do is give our answer a structure. It's like get the skeleton in place so we can start adding to that skeleton and build a healthy body eventually. How do we give a structure to our answer? Well, we start by looking at the requirements, and I mean the main requirements which we are given initially. You know, they will not tell us a lot about what needs to be done, but we can use them as a starting point, as our main heading, if you wish. And then we go inside the question, inside the specific exhibits, to find the embedded requirements. The embedded requirements tell us what exactly our job is, and we can use those to build subheadings under each of the main headings. And one thing we have to keep in mind is how many marks we've got on offer while answering the question, while deciding on headings and subheadings initially, because 1 mark normally is just one well-explained point, a sentence or two. And if we have, say, a requirement with 6 marks on offer, we don't want to have 6 headings and subheadings. It's not like we want to have a sentence with a heading, then another sentence with a heading. So we have to give a little bit of consideration in advance while we're getting our structure in as to how many marks, how many headings and subheadings we want to have there. Next thing, we think about brainstorming. So far, we've only looked at the requirements and the embedded requirements from the question. We have just skim-read the rest. We've not paid attention to anything. And in front of us, we've got headings, subheadings, we've got something there, and we know what our job is. The brainstorming means we want to look at potential ideas, to generate potential ideas that we can include in the answer. And the first step of the brainstorming would be where we just look what we've dropped down in our word processor, those heading and subheadings, the tasks we have, and think whether or not there is something we know that could be useful in building our answer. Some general ideas that most likely could help. If we look at the requirements we've put down as headings and subheadings, if something jumps right out at us and we think, oh, that could possibly be useful, we can include it. We can write it very briefly underneath that subheading where we think it could be helpful. We don't want to spend a lot of time doing this. We just want to glance at what's in front of us, what we put down already, and thinking very carefully about what those requirements are saying and what they need us to do. Just see, is there anything obvious that I can include? And if it is, I drop it down. If not, then that's fine. We continue our brainstorming, and this time we start reading the question. We start reading the scenario, and as we read it, we discover bits and bobs in it that we could find useful throughout the question, throughout the answer that we are building. So as soon as we find something that we think that could be useful under part A, B, C, or whichever, of our headings and subheadings, we drop that idea down underneath it. So we keep going like this through the whole question. We don't stop having read the first exhibit relating to the first requirement, for example. No, we complete the whole process of brainstorming. So we've seen the whole question, we've seen all the issues. We, of course, all the time think about the requirements and our task and how what we see relates to them. So we've dropped down ideas that could cover everything. And just like we started with some general ideas initially, while we've been reading the scenario, we would find some stuff that backs up and ties very well with our general ideas. We'll also find a lot of stuff that we couldn't have thought about, just, not having read the scenario because they're specific. So we keep adding like that as part of the brainstorming to the skeleton we initially put in place, and it's starting to look like a very healthy body that we have built. What is important during the brainstorming is that when we drop our ideas into our answering field on the word processor, we keep them very short. Yeah, so you can use bullet points and just write a couple of words, not whole long sentences, because this is not your answer, remember. It's just ideas which we may or may not use. And as such, we need just 2-3 words or however many help you in particular. So when we look at them later on, they mean something to us. We know why we put what we put in there, and we can, by looking at it, create a sentence that would be our answer and that would score us the mark. Then we're on to the planning bit. We've gone through the whole question, we've brainstormed, we have a lot of ideas now under all the headings, looking in front, looking at us, staring us in the face, and it's time to decide which ones of those we're going to use. You will often find that you maybe sometimes said the same thing more than once in different places. Maybe you said it with with different words. Maybe sometimes you said it exactly the same. You may decide to delete some of those. You may decide to merge others. You may decide to shift some of them. So you looked at the point that you brainstormed and put somewhere lower inside your answer, but you think that's a critical point, it's very important, very specific, you want to take that one, cut it and paste it on towards the top of your answer. That's the planning bit. You decide what you will use, in what order. You will also think, looking at it again, is there anything more you want to add to your answer? Anything else that you think is important, that needs to be in there? And then you could say that, yeah, that's my plan, I'm ready. But bear in mind that you have to answer all requirements, because if you remember in the other video where I told you you are writing to your manager at work, and you will not ignore some of the tasks they give you. So make sure that when you're planning, you have some ideas to cover every single requirement. Don't go into too much detail for some and have nothing for others. That is not professional. That will not give you all the technical nor all the professional marks that are on offer. Finally, don't worry too much about the quantity. Of course, you want to have enough to pass, and you know that 50% is the pass, isn't it, from all the marks. So if you have a requirement that gives you 10 marks on offer, then of course, ideally you want 10 points, but given the time pressure, you may be thinking, if I can get 7 or 8 points in, which are really well explained, they're proper relevant points and they're well explained, then I can still get 7 or 8 marks out of 10. And if you can do that in the exam, guys, on every single requirement, I promise you, you will become my favorite student, okay? So, yes, quality over quantity, very, very important. Now, see, you've gone through the structuring, brainstorming and planning of your answer. You've spent decent time doing that, and now it's time to just look at your plan and start converting those short bullet points you included initially into sentences. Careful here, you don't have to start with the first one on your list, then the second, then the third. Or you don't have to do part A first, or in fact part C or whatever, You don't have to do it in parts. You just look at all of those points you've got in front of you. until now you have thought very carefully about the whole question, about all the tasks, about all the ideas you've got, so you know what you want to write about. You choose the one that's easiest for you to convert into a sentence and score you a mark, and do that one first. Then find the next easiest, and then the next easiest, and that's how you keep going throughout the whole answer that you're building. You start from the easiest, moving on to the hardest bit. Okay? And what did we say last but not least? Yes? Time is up. Well, time is up. You've been doing the easiest ones first, moving on to the hardest ones, and suddenly your time has finished. What do? Well, you move on. Until now, you should have done a great job, shouldn't you? And even though you couldn't cover all the points you wanted, you left out the hardest ones anyway. So you have to go to the next question and find the other easy points which are in there, and you can score some marks in them. And how much time can you spend then on each question? Well, given there's 3 of them, 50 marks, 25 marks, and you have 195 minutes in total, my suggestion is spend 95 minutes on question 1, the 50 marker, and then split the remaining 100 minutes, 50 and 50 for each of the 25 mark questions. As far as the structure, brainstorming and planning part of approaching the question goes, my advice, guys, is to spend decent time on that. Don't rush this part and try to write quickly, because if you do that well, if you structure your answer well, if you generate good ideas, and if you plan them in, to select the best ones in the best order, you will massively increase the output of both technical and professional marks. And that means that if you're doing the 50 mark question for 95 minutes, feel free to spend 30 to 35 minutes on doing just that. And then you have still an hour to write 25, 30 points, yeah? That shouldn't be a problem if you thought about them so well at the beginning. Similar with the 25 markers. If you have 50 minutes in total, then spend at least 10, maybe even 15, and if need be, go up to 20, but do a decent job on that, and then quickly type them into sentences in the remaining half an hour. I believe you can do that, but you really need to practice.